In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is that hour. We have gathered tonight under special circumstance. Tonight, our topic is Fort Leavenworth, and tonight we honor the veterans of our country. Tonight, we do our veteran special, and I'm going to ask Heather Lawson, as an honor, we want to thank her for her service in the United States Army. Female veterans are hard to find, so we're going to work with that. Tonight, our guest, or our co-host, are Heather Lawson, our case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
Mia Kerr, our social media manager and public relations manager.
Hey there.
And Eric Kerr, our research manager and assistant public relations manager.
Hello.
So tonight we talk about Veterans Day and what it means. So Heather, tell us what Veterans Day is all about. She just took a hell of a slug of some hard liquor there. So, all right.
Excuse me. Veterans Day. Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day. It was a U.S. holiday to honor the end of World War I on November 11th, 1918. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. It evolved into Veterans Day in 1954 as the U.S. had been through the devastation of World War II and then Korean War. The 83rd U.S. Congress amended the act of the 1938 armistice, replacing the word with veteran. In 1954, President Eisenhower wrote, "The VA administrator, I have today signed a proclamation calling upon all of our citizens to observe Thursday, November 11th as Veterans Day." In 1968, the Uniform Holiday Monday Act made it confusing as it made all holidays to be on Monday. And nobody liked it because it confused everybody. Because everybody's used to, Veterans Day being on Monday, Memorial Day being last at the end of May.
Sure.
So in 1977, President Ford said no more of this. He returned Veterans Day to November 11th, like it should be. Mm-hmm. And he said from now on, forevermore, it will be November 11th, starting next year.
Whatever day it falls on.
Whatever day, it will be November 11th.
How did the banks feel about that?
It is a U.S. holiday, but it is not a federal holiday.
Gotcha. I figured it was so the banks could have another day off to not serve us.
Yeah.
So nobody's off, like banks and the post office. It's not a federal holiday. It's a it's a recognized holiday.
Well, it is a federal holiday, but it doesn't.
Well, a federal holiday means that the post office and the banks are closed.
But
it's a U.S. recognition holiday, in that sense. So we all recognize Veterans Day, but the office buildings aren't closed. And this day is different from Memorial Day. Memorial Day is the day we recognize all the soldiers and service members who've lost their lives in service.
Yeah.
Veterans Day is the day we recognize everybody who has served or is still serving in the service to their country.
Right.
And we recognize all veterans who served in wartime or peacetime.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't consider you a veteran if you did not serve in wartime, which is untrue.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, all service members, whenever they have served, is a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, we thank them for their contributions and their continuing challenges that they go through from day to day.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And Chris.
And Chief.
Chief
Thank
as
you.
well.
Thank you very much. Tell us about
Round of applause.
November's monthly Military Family Appreciation Month.
And oddly enough, November is also Military Family Appreciation Month. Now, this started in 1993 by the Armed Services YMCA. Now, it wasn't official. The first official declaration was in 96. And then every year after that, there's not, unlike Veterans Day, there's not a law. It's every year the sitting president writes a new proclamation stating that November is National Military Family Appreciation Month.
Yes.
It's tradition, but there's no standing law. They just keep following tradition.
So they sign this every year?
Every year
Oh,
in October
okay.
for November.
All right.
During this month, the military family is honored for their sacrifices they make for their service members or the veterans, because they
We go through a
even
lot.
after you get out. Your family still makes sacrifices because veterans still is.
Well, I think it's good that they recognize families because the veteran certainly does a lot, and there's a lot of sacrifice, but people don't realize how much the veteran spouse and their family go through.
Yeah. Without their invaluable encouragement and love from their families, they wouldn't be able to continue to do what they do.
Right.
This month serves as a reminder for the essential role that they play in supporting their service members and vets.
I think it's important. I mean, people don't realize when you're a veteran, it's all about you and your family. Unless, of course, you're single. And I mean,
then you still have, unless you're an orphan, you still have family.
Exactly.
You have a mom and dad, sisters, brothers.
Can I take a moment to recognize my father?
Sure, please.
My
I wish you
father
would.
was military. He was Army. He was a lieutenant colonel. He passed away 7 years ago. But from beyond, I want to thank him for his service. So I did grow up as the son of an Army veteran. And it is definitely challenging because he served in Vietnam. And obviously, as you know, a lot of people brought it home with them.
And they did. And they never quite
when
healed.
they came back, they had it the worst.
Yeah.
Of all the people who came back from overseas.
Mia, do you have someone you'd like to recognize? If
No,
you don't, it's okay.
U.S. or Canadian?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I'm Canadian, and I don't think that I have anyone.
Why are you looking at her like that,
that?
I love Canada.
Yeah.
I do. I really do.
In the Shrine, everybody knows I'm over the Shrine. We sing "Oh Canada," and that's one of the songs only the women's group really is really good at. But do you have anybody at all you think of? If you don't, it's okay.
No, I
It's
I
okay.
don't know of anyone that has served that is in my family.
Heather? Yeah, I know you have several.
Well, my father, he served in the Marine Corps. My nephew served in the Marine Corps. I have...
That's a call out to Raven. Raven, we love you. Yeah.
I have cousins
Yeah.
who served in the Army. I saved my mother for Memorial Day.
Yeah. It's only right.
And my grandfather also. My husband served.
Yeah. Your dad?
I already said my dad.
Okay, I'm sorry. Want to make sure we got him
I
in
think
E9. Yeah, U.S. Marine Corps. My father served United States Navy, Korea, and my grandfather served World War II.
Oh, goodness.
So both there. I'm trying to think. My uncle, United States Army.
Okay.
So only one uncle and one aunt that didn't serve. I mean, me and Heather both come from a pretty diverse veteran background.
I don't know about you, but I got several that go back to the Revolutionary and
Exactly. One of the God, what would you call it? It's one of the pass downs between Lawson family. And it goes to the heir. You have to be a male heir to carry the name. But my dad had a musket that his grandfather, previous Army veteran, found in the house in Kentucky that dates back to the Civil War, Springfield.
Wow.
It is complete. It has a musket ball that's encased that we can't get out. It's actually a flintlock rifle. It gets passed down to every living heir of the Lawsons. So my mother has been, with my permission, has been given the opportunity to keep it until such time that she passes and it comes to me.
she uses it as a decoration.
Yeah, she uses pledge polish on it. That's all beside the point. But anyway,
It's still a family treasure regardless
it's still a
of the
family
pledge.
treasure, even though it shines really nicely. Anyway, that gets passed down to the heirs. And my next one will be my son, Josh Lawson, who will have the opportunity, Joshua will have an opportunity to keep that in the family.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I'd like to say on Veterans Day is Godspeed to all those who have served or thought about serving or served in some capacity. We were thinking of you and we appreciate it, and our prayers are with you.
Yes.
Tonight's topic, Fort Leavenworth. And, one thing I can tell you is the stigmata, if there is such a thing, that stays with us is that, Leavenworth's always been described as the military's prison. When I was a Sea Cadet years ago, and I remember the first time I went to boot camp, circa 1979.
Did you get threatened with it as much as we did?
What now?
Did you?
We got threatened a lot.
Did you get threatened with Fort
I'll never
Leavenworth
forget,
as much as we did?
our company commander, because this is the only time I was ever enlisted. A Kentucky commander came to us and said, if you have any drugs, okay, and this goes back, this is a long story, we're not going to get on this whole drug thing, but anyway, it came out, they said, if you have any drugs, there's a box up here for mail, you need to put the drugs in the box. I'll never forget this funniest thing I ever effing remember. My company commander goes, ibuprofen is not a drug.
Yeah.
Acetylene is not a drug. For all you people that came up and put these things in the box, come up and get them. They're not a drug. We're talking about narcotics. There was no narcotics, but everybody turned in their aspirin. Everybody turned in. They weren't taking
about
chances.
Weed.
Oh
Nothing
my God!
over the
You don't want to
counter.
take a chance because this.
All right.
This for us, you're talking about a 14-year-old going through adult boot camp.
Right.
And oh my God! For anybody who wants to know about Sea Cadets, maybe we'll do an episode on that one time. It's not really paranormal, but oh my God, it's an under 18 reserve, and we were scared shitless. And when he said narcotics, anything including aspirin was a narcotic. It went in the box. So when they waded through it, turned out, we didn't have any in there. But anyway, the funny thing is, people don't realize how much a struggle it is to be a veteran or a veteran's family. I think it's great to have November as the Veterans Month for families. You can't do what you can do unless you're supported. If you have a family and you're not single, it's very important to have that support. So I think this month is more critical than anything else. Also, on another note, this month is the first month that we actually are broadcasting after we talked about our conference room that Spirit meets in and what we're going to name it, and it came back pretty much resoundingly is called the Crypt. So this is the first official.
We're gonna need a sound effect.
Well,
for
we're
when
going to need
say
that. We're actually going to need probably a prop of the Crypt Keeper.
I was
point.
just going to say that.
We get that prop. We can put it in the
Yes.
background, maybe on the credenza on the end of the island next to the coffee maker. That'd be great.
He also needs to be hanging on the wall somewhere.
Yeah, we really need, the Crypt
right
Keeper.
as you enter.
God, I loved that when I was young. But, the crypt is it. So we're trying out some beta designs of our broadcasting equipment. This is all new, so it'll be there. So keep looking. Hey, you want to win a good contest? Contact us and tell us you have a effigy or some sort of prop of the crypt keeper, and we'll be willing to talk about it.
There you go.
So again, tonight we're going to talk about Fort Leavenworth. And when this was first brought up, actually I think it was a buddy of me and Heather's that brought this up. And we kind of halfway said, hey, yeah, we'll look into it, for Veterans Day. And we really wanted to have, Dunlap or Mr. Ballin or one of the guys on here. We didn't get any response back, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're probably very busy. Really wanted them on the show for this, but didn't work out. So we started researching Fort Leavenworth. And I'll tell you what, this whole episode is all about Heather. Heather really ran with this. She did a hell of a job. And I'll tell you what, oh my God, Leavenworth, first of all, I have family.
We could have made more than one episode.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
It was tremendous. I have family in Wichita, Kansas. I'll tell you, Kansas, much like Cleveland, and we'll probably leave all of our listeners in those areas, is the fucking armpit of the world. Oh, my God. When I was a kid, we used to go to Wichita, Kansas. You go out 70 from Indiana, because we're out of Indiana. We go out 70. At Kansas City, Missouri, you make the turn on the toll road. Okay, this is 4 hours. And the most you see is oil wells, oil pumps, and sagebrush. I remember as a kid, I was condemned because I stepped out in this dust storm, so I'd never seen one before. It was a 126 camera and took pictures of it. I still have the pictures. And this is back in the 70s. I'd never seen like it for my life. I realized Kansas really isn't my first choice of residence. It's kind of a shithole because the wind. I'm sorry for all those in Kansas, but anyway.
Sorry, Kansas.
Yeah, and Jimmy, my cousin, if you're listening, there's no offense, lad. Anyway, but he'll tell you all the wind blows all the tree seeds to Colorado. That's why they don't have any. And it blows it all to Colorado, Oklahoma. Flat. Yeah, so when you're out there, it's really a barren plain, and so
it really is flat.
I didn't realize I want to put this out there, I've never been to Leavenworth, either officially or unofficially. I want to make sure everybody's aware of that fact.
You've never been court-martialed.
I've never been court-martialed. I've never been put in custody. I've never been transported to Leavenworth. But Leavenworth has a very... Yet. Go ahead.
Still time.
Yeah. Give it time. It's a very diverse background. And I was really surprised. I was going to ask my cousin, and... to go up and get me several books, because their actual museum there at Fort Leavenworth only sells books that you only get there. You can't order them online or anything else, which is odd.
Yeah, I tried.
Yeah, we tried to get a couple, and I'll be honest with you, I wish I had. But anyway, Heather, why don't you start us out on the history of Leavenworth?
Fort Leavenworth is the third largest fort in the U.S. It is located 2 miles north of the city of Leavenworth, on Highway 73, in northeastern corner of Kansas. Fort Leavenworth is the U.S. Army's installation located in Kansas and built in 1827. It is the second oldest active U.S. Army post west of the Mississippi.
And that says a lot right there.
And the oldest permanent settlement in Kansas. Fort Leavenworth has been historically known as the intellectual center of the Army. Today, the garrison supports the U.S. Army Trading and Doctrine Command, known to most soldiers as TRADOC, by managing and maintaining the home of the U.S. Army Combined Arms Center, known as CAC. CAC's mission involves leader development, collective training, and Army doctrine and battle command, current and future. Leavenworth is also the home to the Military Corrections Complex, consisting of the United States Disciplinary Barracks, the Department of Defense's only maximum security prison, the Midwest Joint Regional Correctional Facility. In addition, Fort Leavenworth Garrison supports numerous tenant organizations that directly and indirectly relate to the functions of the CAC, including the United States Army Command and General Staff College, and the Foreign Military Studies Office. It occupies 5,600 acres and has 7 million square feet of floor area, 1,000 buildings, and 1,500 quarters. It is located on the Frontier Military Scenic Byway, which is U.S. Route 69 and K7 corridor, which was originally a military road connecting to Fort Scott and Fort Gibson. Fort Leavenworth was also the base of African American soldiers of the U.S. 10th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Army, formed on 21 September 1866. Most people know them as the Buffalo Soldiers, nicknamed by the Native American tribes who fought them. The term eventually applied to all of African American regiments formed in 1866. Today, there's a monument to them at Fort Leavenworth.
And I think for most military personnel, Fort Leavenworth is represented as a prison. Most people don't realize as a military disciplinary system. Most people don't realize this is a fully active base. It has the CAC. It has other things there. Most people, is always joke. You screw up, you go to Leavenworth. When I was told back in the Sea Cadet days, when I was told that there was no double jeopardy in the service. If you committed a crime that led over to civilian life, you served the first half of it. So you were sentenced to 8 years. Your first half in the military, and the other half you served in civilian. So where normally a civilian would be charged 8 years in total, you would serve 8 years in Leavenworth and 8 years outside of that. And so it was drummed into us to no end. So tell us a little about the penitentiary end of it, Heather.
So, the penitentiary at Leavenworth was the first of 3 federal prisons authorized during the 1890s to avoid housing federal prisons and prisoners in state prisons, known for scandal and mistreatment of inmates. Prisoners have been incarcerated in Leavenworth area since before Kansas gained statehood in 1861. At that time, a territorial jail there became the first state penitentiary. Congress established the U.S. Army Disciplinary Barracks at Leavenworth in 1874. In 1895, Congress ordered the military prison transferred to the Department of Justice, creating one of the first federal prisons for civilian offenders. The U.S. government operated a penitentiary in Washington, D.C. from 1831 to 1862, as well as territorial prisons.
The funny thing about this is, even though Leavenworth is thought of as a prison, and certainly it was much more than that, is the fact that, we're talking about dates here. We're going back to the earliest of, 1823, I think was the earliest. My old saying is that all old buildings are creepy, but not all old buildings are haunted. But in this case, old buildings sometimes can certainly become haunted because of all the activity and everything it saw. One good example of this is the Rock. Mm-hmm. When you look at the Rock, it goes back. It was originally a military prison before it ever became a federal prison. Much it and Leavenworth have a lot in common. So, when you look at this, we start talking about hauntings, okay? And certainly, Leavenworth, the more we dug into this, I and Heather, I helped her out with this, is the fact that, oh my God, this would be a great place as a field trip. We wanted to go to Kansas. Not that I've ever wanted to go to Kansas for any reason other than visit my cousins, but oh my God, yeah, there's just so much here. And let's start out with the haunted locations. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's pronounced Rookery.
Yeah, the Rookery.
Rookery. And Heather, tell me what a Rookery... I love this when she told me this. Tell me what a Rookery actually is. About the Ravens? Kick in.
Well, I always heard that it's an aviary for ravens.
Yeah. That's the thing I found amusing. Why would they call it the Rookery? And we don't have an actual explanation, I don't believe, do we? As to why it's called Rookery. But
according to Google, A rookery is a breeding colony for rooks.
And rooks are?
Chess pieces.
A bird.
Yeah, chess
It's a
pieces.
bird.
Yeah, a bird, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so this place exists between 12 and 14 Summer Place on the base. It's the oldest house on the base and said to be haunted by several spirits. Built in 1832, the residence has been occupied continuously since it's been erected. The number of ghosts who haunt this old residence has been given it the reputation being the most haunted house in Kansas, which is pretty big. The most prevalent ghost is that of a woman with long hair who rushes at people with her fingernails clawing in an attack. Said to have been the victim of violence long ago, her ghostly presence lingers within the rookery. And this is actually the White Lady of the Rookery, and we'll talk a little bit about her. She actually appears here as well as in Cemetery 1. Another apparition is that of an elderly woman who's often seen chattering in the corner. A third ghostly specter is that of a young girl who is often seen throwing a tantrum. As the residents are trying to sleep, they often report being rousted by the old woman in a nightshirt with brushy hair. So, yeah, I mean, certainly this is an active location. The rookery is something that's been, and any base assignment you have as an officer, you inherit somebody else's past. I mean, it comes with that. We did, I think, Veterans Day last year. We did some really interesting stories that came up with that of being different deployments.
So was the rookery a place that prisoners were?
no, it's an officer's quarter.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay.
worse. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and me and Heather walked back and forth. Her being enlisted, me being commissioned.
We don't get those privileges.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll be honest with you.
We get row houses.
Gotcha.
We, as a commissioned officer, we usually get better quarters. But either way, whether you're enlisted, whether you're commissioned, you're inheriting something of those before you. Now, I think this
Yes.
goes back to
Oh,
last
yeah.
year's, veterans. Go ahead, Eric. I know you guys.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
quick question. So,
sure.
as it goes to the rookery, if it was an officer's quarters, would
Sure.
the family members have been staying there as well?
Yes, most
Yes.
certainly.
I'm trying to
Yes.
figure out where the haunting would actually come from,
Well-
especially when you're talking about women and children.
So, the rookery is one of the oldest buildings on Fort Leavenworth. It's one of the original buildings, and it's been continuously occupied since it's built. So, families stationed at Fort Leavenworth
Yes.
have lived there pretty much since Leavenworth has been built.
And this goes back
Gotcha.
in the early 1800s. When you're a commissioned officer, your family, well, it doesn't matter if you're enlisted, commissioned. Generally, if you're married, your family will go with you if possible to the local base. Even if you're deployed, usually your family will stay.
Depends on where you go.
Yeah, it depends on where you go. Mm-hmm. Get deployed. I mean, Heather's mother was deployed to Okinawa, and we inherited a lot of the furniture from there.
But that was not a family-friendly base, so we didn't go.
Yeah, and I think that's
Oh, wow.
yeah. So, how long were you apart?
A year.
Year.
I think if you went a year, if she didn't take us, she stayed a year. If we went, it was like 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Because they pay for your goods to go. And it's expensive. Obviously it's expensive to ship all your stuff over.
Right.
So they
If you're in the service, keynote, you move. Just me and Heather can tell you all about this.
we
Every
moved
4 years.
Every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
When I
And-
was little, it was
yeah.
a lot more. Now they've stabilized it to 3 to
Don't
4.
plan more than 4 years in any location.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
in order to recoup some of those expenses, they elongate it from 1 year to 4 years. Obviously, So I think my mom chose to just go by herself for
Yeah.
1 year and just get it over with.
right.
I think that plays into a lot of things because, I knew guys, Marines, that was a common thing. Be put on Okinawa. With the Navy, you could be put in a lot of different ports. My dad opted during Korea to go over to Europe. And, certainly I was in the South Indies quite a bit. I think a lot of it had, and I'll tell you one thing. Oh my God, I wish we could, this last move, we would have been moved by the military because they pack everything, move it, and unpack it. When you have to do it on your own, oh my God, folks, it's a
They
whole...
unpack it too?
Oh, yes.
You can tell them, no, you don't want it unpacked, but
Yeah.
they'll unpack it for you.
Oh,
They'll
my
unpack it
God.
and put it wherever you want it.
I think I prefer
That's
that.
part of the contract.
Civilian life sucks when you're moving. Let me tell you what. And you know, drunken firemen don't help. But anyway, I'm just saying. I want to bring that out.
Sorry, friends.
So in the 1800s, do you think that their families went with them? I mean, if it was
certainly.
if it was
they
within
could.
the states, maybe.
Probably at that time, the rookery was reserved for.
Yeah, probably single officers.
Well, no, it's probably reserved for upper level officers.
Well, we're talking, okay, because there's several different branches. You know, when you go into commission, you have the young commissioned soldiers or officers, or what you want to call it, within the first 03 to 04. And then you have another branch, which is going up to closer to the 06, 07 area, and then you have scrambled eggs beyond that, which scrambled eggs is, you're talking general in the Army, you're talking admiral in the Navy, you're talking higher ranks.
So Levenworth is always most Army, I don't know about Navy, but
Go ahead and explain the ranks of the Army
most
so it's easier
Army
to understand.
bases are ran by a general.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes, occasionally it's a colonel.
Yeah. Okay. Where we left off was we were talking about the rookery being possibly. You know, the thing is, generally in the service, when you move, if you're a family, you know, I was a single. Okay. So when you're single, it's quite a bit different than if you're a family unit. If you're a family unit, they try to provide you on-house or in-house basing.
On-base housing.
On-base housing. That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, and it's usually fairly decent. Now, if it's 01, 02, 03, you're a junior officer. Sometimes they even 04. And you're not going to
They get row houses too, but they're just nicer.
They're nicer than they're nicer than certainly enlisted, you know, high enlisted, but they're not that great. When you get above, you know, 04, 05, you're starting to get into what's as a captain with the Navy, with the Army, it's a colonel. You're starting to get a much better base housing.
So the rookery was probably, so
I would
at the
say
time,
that's a younger,
it could have even been the XO's house.
Yeah, it could have been. Well, you really think so? I figure the XO had, because General had his own quarters, so I'm figuring the XO had his own. Okay.
Yeah.
The XO, for those that don't know, that's the executive officer second in charge.
So the general always gets his house, his own house, and it's usually the biggest house on the base.
Oh, yeah. It's nice.
Biggest and best.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the executive officer gets his own house, too. And it's almost as nice, but
For instance,
let's,
you know, if you talk about...
It might be, it might have been his at first.
Yeah.
Nowadays, obviously, it's not. No, because it's not that nice.
No.
But in the 1800s, it could have put in the executive.
It's a multi-unit, so you wouldn't have a colonel or a captain staying there. They would have their own quarters. This would be something for more single commissioned or younger commission with a family. I mean, because this is a multi-unit complex. The rookery is not small.
Yeah, in the 1800s, it may not have been a multi-unit. It might have been a single house.
Exactly, and we don't know how that expanded because it's not related to us.
So you get all these families from the 1800s to now it's.
And I can tell you, I always tell a story back when I was
time for ghosts.
Back when I was in high school, I was still in Sea Cadets, and I dated a young lady. Her dad was the commander of naval avionics. Now, in Indianapolis, Indiana, naval avionics was the biggest place there was. They developed all the systems that were honing systems for the weaponry. They developed a lot of things, and they were at 10th and Arlington Avenue. It wasn't far from where I lived. And I'll never forget when I went to go pick her up. She never told me that her old man was the XO. And here I am, a Sea Cadet. I'm a first-class petty officer. I'm working my way up. I go to get her, and she gives me this address, and I can't find it. This day before GPS, before Google Maps, so I'm looking trying to figure out where the hell.
They had to use a regular map.
Yeah, they actually had to use. We had to use phone books and that kind of shit. So I can't find this place, and I call her. I stop at a payphone at 10th and Arlington. I said, "Hey, I'm trying to find."
Didn't have cell phones either.
No, didn't have cell phones. That wasn't something I had. I had a 70. I was driving.
Was it a dime or a quarter?
I think it was a dime back then. I was driving a 76
you're
K5 Blazer. Yeah. I mean, and that was not a horribly old vehicle. I bought that, a 76 K5 Blazer. Or, I stopped, I called her, and I said, her name was Sonia, I'll never forget it. And she says, I said, where the hell is this at? She says, well, it's on Naval Avionics property. You're a Sea Cadet. You should know this. I go, oh, my God. It says, your old man, one of the three, because you had the CO, the XO, and then we called the TIC, third in charge. She goes, yeah, my dad's XO. I'm thinking, oh, my God.
I'm going home.
I want to go home now. I end the date so I don't have a problem. She says, don't worry about it. Just pull on the base and identify yourself. I'm thinking, Jesus effing. So I pull on the base. I show him my cadet ID, and the guy is, it's Marines walking around my vehicle. He looks at me and says, what are you here for? I said, I'm here to pick up the XO's daughter. He looks at me and says, what are you, stupid? I should have answered that question, but I looked at him. I said, not particularly. And he says, all right, lad, good luck with you. And so,
good luck.
Yeah, I go to get her at the front door.
I said apparently.
Oh, yes. I go to the front door.
Yes.
Her mother answers the door. Sweet lady. She asked me to come inside. I come inside. And of course, I'm not in uniform, but I'm I look over in the dining room, and the old man's jacket, his dress white jacket sitting there. It's like 8 rolls of ribbons. I couldn't count good then, but anyway, 8 rolls of ribbons. I'm looking at going, oh my God, if I screw up, this is going to be horrible. And so, without going into great detail, she gets in the car, and she's a little bit more casual about her sexual relationships than I was at the time, knowing that her old man was CXO. And I thought, this could end or make my career all in 2 hours' time. And I'll never forget it. But anyway, I remember that distinctively. The three most highest ranks within Naval Avionics had their own area. That area's been gone for a long time. Naval Avionics now, I think it's Raytheon. But
actually, I don't think it's Raytheon anymore.
Oh, God, maybe something else. I can't remember. We've been a while since we were by there. But I remember that distinctively. I remember the exact housing they had and the nice places. That all has changed. But most bases you go on has that housing. So, I mean, the rookery probably, especially today, is probably something below 04, and, with families and so forth. It's a multi-unit establishment. So, having said that, one thing that we can tell is it's located between 12 and 14 Summer Place. So those that know the fort will know where that's at. The residence has been occupied continuously since the point of its existence in 1832. The number of ghosts who haunt this old residence has given it the reputation of being the most haunted house in Kansas. The most prevalent ghost is that of a woman with long hair who rushes at people and we talked about this. Yeah, we already said this already. But anyway, the one thing I want to bring up about this is we're going to talk about this again. When we get down a little further, we start talking about the white lady or the gray lady of Levenworth. So we're going to come back to that. Another apparition, of course, we talk about the older woman. She'll come into that in the process as well. So next area, the disciplinary barracks. Now this is the area that most people in the military think of Leavenworth. When they think of Leavenworth, they think of it as a prison, not as a base. Because when you screw up, you go to Leavenworth, and that was where you served out your term. So, matter of fact, there was a movie made, and I'm going to tell you, I don't recall it altogether. It had, what's the black guy from Star Wars? It was one of the...
was it Shawshank Redemption?
Nope. This is...
Carl Weathers?
Nope.
Oh, wrong one.
The guy that played the Jedi Knight in
You're talking
Star
about
Wars.
Lando Calrissian.
Nope. This is much later. This is like in the last episode.
The one that says...
Yeah, it's not one of my favorite actors.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson, yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what was just said, but I was just coached.
No, and it's not one of my favorre actors, but he actually plays
exactly
in this.
what I was talking about.
And the guy that plays into this, I think it's Tom Cruise. And It's really neat. It has some African American overtones into it, but it's about Levenworth, where he goes to serve out his term, and it has to do with marching and cadence. It's a really neat movie, and I don't know what the movie is. Can you look that up? Anybody? But a really neat show, and it has to do with Leavenworth, and I think that it goes beyond that. But the disciplinary barracks is what most people remember, and I tell you what, this show was one of the ones that. It wasn't Tom Cruise. I was trying to think of who it was. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen's who was in it. It was about the time he served, and he had to serve it out, and it's really kind of neat. I really enjoyed watching it, but most military persons, especially if you go back in the 90s while I was in Sea Cadets and all that, these are the people. This is what they're going to tell you. They remember it as anybody said Leavenworth, the first thing that came to mind was disciplinary barracks. So. The old disciplinary barracks has 12 towers along the walls. These are, your watchtowers. And before the barracks closed, not all of them were manned. Number 8 tower had not been renovated and was never manned during the latter years the prison was open. Closed off, the only way you could get into the tower, we have to change. Have you had any look there?
I'm still looking.
Okay, still looking. They have some great YouTube videos on this particular movie that she's looking for. But anyway, the tower was to walk. The only way you can get into Tower 8 was to walk along the wall from another tower. However, the guards would often report seeing something move inside the tower. Long ago, a soldier committed suicide in this tower by shooting himself in the head. When the prison was still open, the control tower would often get phone calls. Okay, this is the main control unit, what we call CIC. We get phone calls from the 8th tower, even though there was never a phone in that tower. But and don't ask me how, but some reason or another that number went back to the 8th tower. I think it was actually a phone line they meant to put in, but never was ever installed. When the line was picked up, there was only static on the other end at the tower. Building 65. Now, this is a different building. Any luck on that, hun, yet?
No.
Okay. Chief Lawson here, your host of Ghost to Ghost. We'd like to take this opportunity to take a quick break. We'll be right back with you. Okay, sorry, folks. We were out for just a minute. We were reporting drinks. So, anyway, we're talking about the rookery. Yeah, and other things. Yeah, we're talking about the rookery. So... as we talked about this being a officer's accommodation.
We've moved on to the disciplinary barracks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We moved on to disciplinary barracks. That was 3 scotches ago, and I must have missed that. So anyway, the disciplinary barracks, we talked about this earlier. Every service person thought of this as, when you said the word Leavenworth, prison came to mind.
This is what you thought of.
Yeah, and this is where it's at. And honestly, and this building has since been razed and redone, and, certainly. But one of the big things was, or a couple of the big things was, one of which was Tower 8. And we talked about this earlier, that, the tower received phone calls. Tower never really had a phone. But most of the recruits were scared to death to ever do watch on that tower. A little bit goes back to that, and certainly, there's a lot to that, but that is certainly one of the big stigmatas, or better yet, let's use the word legendary references that go back to that. Now let's talk about Building 65. Building 65 was the original hospital. It's known because it has a haunted...
Prison hospital.
Prison hospital. Let me recorrect that. Prison hospital. And it has a haunted elevator shaft, okay? And that shaft is famous because of why?
14 German POWs were hanged there.
Yep.
In the shaft.
In the
elevator shaft.
What makes a better platform? You don't drop them away or push them off the edge, and you got a 4 or 5 foot drop. Yeah, it makes a great hanging. Yeah. So
and now, often the guards report hearing screams coming from that elevator shaft.
There's also a ghostly man in a wheelchair seen. He's being pushed by another ghostly figure.
Oh.
The old disciplinary barracks has a lot involved there, and it runs from, the barracks was existent from 1875 to 2002.
That's a long run.
So
That's
for
a
those
hell
of
of a
us that are not educated on Fort Leavenworth,
Yeah.
I know what my assumption is, but it could be completely wrong. So, other than the 14 German POWs,
Yeah.
is this also a place where military people were executed for, like, treason?
Certainly.
It's held other Nazi prisoners.
Well, not just that, but American turncoats. I mean, this is
and
your main military barracks.
Other famous U.S. prisoners.
Yeah. If you
During
were
Prohibition and
determined
such.
to be a traitor
And
you were sentenced to time, possibly even execution, this is where it happened at.
So, I would assume that there was actually a reasonable death count there.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, most
I
certainly.
don't know what the number is, but that
Unfortunately, we don't either, but it's high.
nobody knows.
Yeah.
I guarantee it's high.
And then, even though they had a hospital there,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was a hospital.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
they got the basic care. They probably didn't.
We
get
need to get you together enough we can execute you.
Yeah.
I get it.
I mean,
Yeah,
They bought
Right.
they bought rope by the gross.
exactly. Yeah,
Got
and you know, back when I was in, the two forms of execution for the military was either hanging or firing squad. That was the only two you got. So I mean, you know, rope and shells. Shells you had already. So anyway.
or elevator shafts.
Oh yeah. there's
Actually, I
that.
may be wrong about this, but I think
Yeah.
that firing squad is still a method of execution that's
It
legal in
is,
Kansas,
it is.
isn't it?
Yeah, hanging has been removed in the military now. Firing squad is the last. I mean, because vets have been trying to get Jane Fonda in front of that for years.
Oh.
I'm sure that'll be interesting in our reviews. But anyway, what the hell? Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about another location. We're going to talk a little bit. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll talk about another ghost in general. George Custer.
Yes, General Custer. He's seen to be seen at the general's residence because obviously he's general. General's residence is located at 1 Scott Avenue, and Custer was tried for and court-martialed for mistreating his troops, and he was put on 1 year without suspension, without pay,
Yeah.
and he was confined to his residence during this
That's
time.
1 year. The military sees no,
He couldn't go outside.
No.
No,
Otherwise, you can look out by the windows. Yeah.
House arrest.
he's looking for deer.
Yeah.
So
Oh, dear.
Did he have an
Yeah.
ankle bracelet?
no, but he probably had guards.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They were still a little pissed.
now-
I mean, yeah.
It's been reported that he's seen roaming the first floor of the general's residence because of
Okay.
this.
Now,
Well.
for those that have never heard it, I want you to go out and search YouTube for Ray Stevens, Mr. Custer. Please, Mr. Custer. I don't want to go. Anyway, you need to look that up and at least run through that one time. Graveyard Cemetery number 1. There's 4 cemeteries, as I understand it, at Levenworth. Now, I want to make this clear. I or Heather, neither one have ever been stationed or ever visited Leavenworth, Kansas.
No,
No. I have
not in either
friends,
capacity.
including my cousin, Jimmy, if you're listening, this is out to you, that live in Wichita, Kansas. For those that live in Kansas, I am so sorry. Oh, my God, is that a horrible state? Yeah, this is another one we're going to lose ratings on. But anyway.
Listen, I'm from rural Florida. Could it be that bad?
Oh, no, it's that bad.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
you know, I'll tell you what. Every year, my dad had family in Kansas. My grandfather lived there. My aunt, a couple uncles, they live in Wichita. So we go out 70 from Indianapolis to hit Kansas City, Missouri. There's Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. That's about as confusing as the town we live in. But anyway, you turn south there, and it's 4 hours along the Flint Hills. All you will see is oil wells, oil grafting, and you'll see tumbleweeds. So in other words, you don't see shit for 4 hours, except for when you start in the turnpike, you'll pass a gas station. Island has a restaurant and a gas station. And right before you get off, it has the same thing. Wichita is known for its wind that drives all the fruit trees, well, all the trees in general, all the seeds to Colorado and Oklahoma. That's why they don't have any seeds or any trees there. It's barren. It's known as a dust bowl. even though it didn't, but it is. So, long story short, I mean, it's a very desolate area. It just seems fitting they put the prison there. So, graveyard number 1, the ghost, probably the most common ghost, the Gray Lady of Levenworth, was a name rendered to Catherine. Is it Sutter? I think Sutter.
Sutter is most.
Yeah, Sutter is the most common name attached with that. The story is, in the 1880s, Catherine was living there. Her husband was an officer on the base, and he was sent out on patrol. She sends her 2 children, a daughter and a son, out to gather firewood. Now, first of all, this is obviously not the mother of the year. Why would you send 2 young kids out and this was a blizzard, supposedly, or close to it, a severe weather storm, to gather firewood? Why the hell wouldn't you tell the kids stay in the house, you go get it yourself?
Because this is Kansas.
That's right. It's a dust bowl, and that's what they do. So anyway.
That's what children are for.
Yeah,
that's right.
To do the chores.
They're all expendable. Yeah.
Isn't that what we all have children for?
That's right.
Do the manual work.
To allow
Plow
us
the
to
fields.
have. Yeah. It's a legalized form of slavery. But anyway, yeah. So.
Sorry, people.
Yeah. It's what it is, kids. And our kids will tell you. That's what they're there for. So anyway. The kids disappear in this storm. Okay, they're not heard of. They don't know what happened to them. So they send out patrols. But anyway, she's beside herself, being the fact that Catherine set them out. So she at some point dies of pneumonia. And I'm just paraphrasing this.
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. She's out doing all this.
Well, she did go out and look for him.
Yeah, look for him.
I see.
Yeah,
okay.
So she dies of pneumonia, and then she ends up being a ghost. Okay, so the thing is, during this period of time, it just so happens the Indians in the area find the children. They fell into the river and washed downstream. They rescue them. They keep them until spring thaw, where they can bring them back to the base and turn them in. But of course, by the time they arrive, Mom has already
alive.
They were alive the whole time.
Oh my gosh!
She just waited.
Yeah, they were just staying with the Indians, chilling out. So they get back, and Mom's gone, and Dad's there. But Dad's come home and. So anyway, long story short, this mother, Catherine Sutter, the Gray Lady of Leavenworth, patrols cemetery number 1. Also,
looking for her kids.
Looking for the kids. Also, just like any other good Walmart, there's always someone looking for their damn kids.
I mean, she's also pissed off that she's spending eternity in Kansas.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
so she's mad
that's the other
and
part
looking
to
for
it.
the kids.
Yeah.
Just like in the old days of Kmart, the blue light special. Kids, you find them, they run her off, you beat the shit out of them in the middle of Kmart. Spank their ass. Yeah. Nowadays they call the cops and the DNA on air.
Listen, if you think this is something, guys, you should have been around during the break.
Yeah.
You missed so much.
A whole lot. So anyway.
So much.
So she's buried at the cemetery at Fort Leavenworth, and her ghost reappears. Another ghost, a prominent ghost, is Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce Indian leader, who was incarcerated in 1877 as a result of the Indian Wars and Civil War. So he died there, so in turn walks there. So the parade field, another
It's
area.
also said that you can see Civil War soldiers walking through the nearby woods.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Taking up positions. Parade grounds. One of the things when I was in Sea Cadets, one of the last things we did, we got to be in Great Lakes and Parade Hall number 100, and it was torn down shortly afterwards. Now, I want to point out we had nothing to do with the reason why it was torn down. Anyway, but it had some wonderful murals. Yeah, at least that's our story, and we're sticking to it. The parade grounds at night in Leavenworth, they see divisions of troops marching in the fog.
Oh, I don't doubt that either.
No. So, we're going to talk about the Carroll Mansion. It's located at 1128 5th Street. Visitors there are seeing a woman in period clothing and hearing the sounds of heavy footsteps. Makes it hard to stay there. Now, I'll tell you what, when you're transferred to a new area and you have to move in, you're inheriting whatever's left behind. So this is always a bit harder. Sumner House. Heather, would you like to take that one?
And then the Carroll Mansion is ran by the Historical Society.
Yes, not the fort. So, good point. Sumner House.
The Sumner House. In the 1970s, an apparition described as being a middle-aged woman in a woolen skirt lived in the house's attic and loved to look through the attic window to study the people down below in the yard and the street. She would smile at them and wave. She also liked to help the family living there with household chores and childcare. One night, the family was surprised to see this matronly apparition washing their dishes in the sink.
Can she come to my house?
I was just thinking that.
Why can't we get these out here to our home?
We do not have an apparition at our house.
When I saw this, when I was, looking this up and I saw this, I was like, man, I need one of these.
Yeah. We all do.
We talk about the mirror in our house. I'm thinking, why didn't these spirits come out and start the dishwasher?
My apparition that we have at the house.
I mean,
our apparition actually leaves meat and cheese in the sink strainer.
I'll leave her.
That isn't helpful.
No.
After her kitchen duty debut, she made herself visible to the entire family many times. Also, when going up or down the stairs, sometimes family members would feel her presence brush against their arms. It would feel cold at the spot of contact. Mm-hmm. One of the children told the parents that this nice lady would read stories to him until he went to sleep.
Wow.
And the parents found a mysterious book in the child's room that they had never seen before, and it didn't belong to them.
But here's the funny thing.
We've never found the title or nobody says what the book is.
Website you look at. No one tells us what the book is or the name of the book. So
interesting.
Sheridan House. Okay, this is another one that's off. It's on base, but an angry, vengeful apparition of Mrs. Sheridan, the wife of General Philip Sheridan, makes a pest of herself among the living. Her husband left her while she was in the process of dying to go to Chicago on business. Oh. An angry, yeah.
No wonder she's pissed.
No shit, yeah. And she died while he was gone. An angry, vengeful apparition, Miss Sheridan, the wife of General Philip Sheridan, makes a pest of herself. And she goes along doing things. I think we repeated that. But anyway, she goes along the process of dying to go through to Chicago. She finds things to do, making noises, moving things. It really upsets the family.
It's completely inconsiderate, if you ask me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Exactly. And so no fun living with the proverbial pest, if you will.
Yeah.
632 Thomas Avenue, site of the original St. Ignace Chapel. This was pretty interesting. Ignatius. In 1875, I stand corrected. 1875, the original church burned to the ground, killing the parish priest, Father Fred. This is a neat one. I've heard a lot of different names, but Father Fred. So, Fred here.
Father Fred.
Yeah, those who lived in the reconstructed rectory reported seeing Father Fred, ghostly figure still roaming the home in his priestly robes. Okay, former site of
Ignatius,
thank you. Ignatius, too many scotches in for that. Ignatius Chapel.
I don't think you could have said that sober.
Yeah, probably not. But we're going to go with the fact I didn't have enough scotch. Anyway, I like that idea. But anyway, the original Ignatius Chapel was built where a house now stands at 632 Thomas Avenue. In 1875, the original church rectory burned down. Material was used to build the new residence. Etched into these bricks are several names, including that of Father Fred. Oh. Many who have lived there have claimed to see Father Fred again walking around and so forth in his priestly robes. Reportedly, he is the most often seen walking up and down the stairs and in the kitchen and dining area. After the first chapel burned down, it was built back at the corner of McClellan and Pope Street. Now, I don't think Pope has anything to do with it, but I'm just saying. Anyway, that's where it was at. I don't think there's any coincidence involved there. However, on December 16, 2000, in early morning hours, it burst into flames again. It was completely destroyed. It makes one wonder if there isn't some more malevolent force work here involved.
I wonder if Father Fred's a little mad.
Yeah, Father may not be happy, Maybe, or maybe
he just wants it to be done and gone.
There is that. I mean,
it burst into flames before, and then they used
it's material 3 times.
Yeah,
it's burned 3 times.
It was meant to be burned down. I think.
I think so. I think he wanted it gone.
I think Father Fred's like, can you, maybe he's just like, quit using my stuff.
Yeah, could be. Okay, the officers' quarters, located at 605 McClellan Avenue, is said to continue to host previous residents.
The ghostly apparitions of a man with a mustache and a goatee once appeared in the fireplace in the middle of a burning fire. This goes back to Harry Potter, I'm just saying. But anyway, when the fire died out, the face continued to linger at the back of the fireplace. The apparition also has been seen in one of the bedrooms, and once in the bedroom with an old-fashioned razor and shaving cream. Bathroom with old-fashioned razor and shaving cream. At other times, loud footsteps are heard on the stairs, doors slamming and shut, and scratching noises and so forth, and loud crashes throughout the house are heard. Residents also report icy cold spots in various locations. So the officers' quarters, that's one we need to look at. Now, the chief of staff quarters at 624 Scott Avenue, Heather?
Yes. It continues to host a tea party in the parlor. Though apparitions have not been seen, several people report hearing the sounds of a tea party coming from an otherwise empty parlor at this residence.
Okay, one thing I want to cover a little bit here before we go any further. You know, I and Heather are 12 years apart in a lot of things, but back when I went to the newly commissioned officer school, we were required to call upon all the officers in our command. So in other words, you'd have your division commander, and then you'd have the base commander and XO and so forth. And you would give them a calling card when you left. Everybody's heard that phrase, calling card. That comes from the military. And you actually have your name printed on it, and you lead that. And part of your orientation to that base was you must make presence known and go to dinner or going to a brunch with these individuals so that you completed this action, and you left to show that you had done that. You left a calling card with your name on it. I don't have any more calling cards from years ago, but that was common. So it was not unusual. Generally, we didn't have tea, but we would have coffee, brunch, or...
If you had a wife, she might have had that with the general's wife.
Exactly. And you made the calling so that way the general, or in my case, the captain, was familiar with all of his crew, and he knew who he was dealing with, either directly through him or through his wife. Now, nowadays, you rarely hear of calling cards and making appearances, but that was part of it. When you went to a new base, you were required to meet with the commander, the XO, the tech. You went through your NCCO. I mean, you went through all this. So, and
Makes
you
sense.
were... Yeah, you were made to host the NCCO and his wife, and I mean, things have changed greatly. That's not the case any longer. So anyway, moving on. You want to take the next one, the general's quarters?
Well, we've already covered the general's
Okay,
residence.
well, really we have. I mean, you know, but one of the things I want to bring out the general's residence is also the ghost of Custer. We talked about this a little bit, but... You know, one of the things is the general's quarters probably had a lot of activity going on in it. We're going to skip forward. Let's talk about the Summer Place house at 18 Summers Place.
Yes, the Sumner house.
Sumner.
This house, the houses in this area are haunted by a kind woman in a black woolen dress and shawl. At one time, this woman was supposedly the nanny/housekeeper who lived in the attic of one of these homes. The benevolent. Sorry.
Benevolent. Yeah.
I need to
But I've been
drink
there.
more.
Yeah.
Can you pass the
Benevolent.
fireball?
Yeah.
Thanks.
The benevolent spirit is said to look after the families in the area by trying to help with domestic chores, such as doing the dishes and making beds. Another one. Man, where are all these ghosts coming from?
I may need
Useful
to move
ghosts.
to Kansas.
Right?
Yeah.
Are they all at Kansas?
Watch your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Watch your dirty mouth. I mean,
Yeah.
also. I mean, it's supposed to be something else, but I'm not going to say that here. Also drawn to children, she looks after them and tries to calm them when they're upset. However, the ghostly spirit evidently feels some animosity towards other babysitters or grandmothers that she considers competition.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
These people often report feeling a firm push out of the upstairs nursery by unseen hands.
Oh.
Wow.
At one time, the residence of 16 Sumner Place was so unnerved by her presence that an exorcism was conducted
Ouch.
in the house.
Ooh.
Fun. I wonder how that went over.
Did
with
it work?
The base house.
I can see explaining that to my XO. Well, sir.
Well, you
Yeah,
gotta tell
that'd
base
go
housing
well.
too, because that's
Yeah,
assigned housing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The whole thing would end up on the old man's desk, and I'd had to
Uh-huh.
answer to it the next morning. Yeah.
Would it be on the blotter?
Oh yeah. I bet it would.
Oh.
Oh no, I bet it would.
Yeah.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, I bet it would.
For those that don't know, the blotter is like the police report, daily police report
Gotcha.
that goes to
The old man, the XO, the third and all of them get a copy of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guarantee you it'd be on it. Yeah.
I have never been involved in that, except I
Yeah.
did go to college and I was on the blotter many times.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Many times.
Most colleges have
Yeah.
some kind
Yeah.
of blotter.
Oh
Anyway.
boy.
The lady in black left the residence only to take up her duties again next door.
Oh, so the exorcism
Next door
just
where?
pushed her next
Yeah,
door.
Oh yeah.
Just,
Can't stay here, but you have to go. It's always saying, the bar's
You know-
closed. You can't stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Yeah.
Now, the question is, did the military pay to move her next door?
That's the question.
That's what I wanna
Did
know.
they unpack her and everything?
Yeah,
She
I don't
was.
know.
so
She went to 18 Sumner
no, she
Place.
ended up next door at 18 Sumner Place.
Ah.
Witnesses have also reported seeing her ghostly figure looking out of the attic window.
I'm not going to lie. I was looking at the show notes and I thought we were in repeats. But I just realized it was the alcohol. That's all.
That's all.
It's not really-
Yeah, most certainly. Okay, last one we got is Honda Locations, the officer's quarter. Located at 605 McClellan Avenue, is said to continue to host previous residents. And we kind of covered this to begin
Yes.
with. I think we already have. So I don't want to go over it real big. But, certainly, all bases, I think, have an imprint on time. And we have...
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's got to. And some of it, certainly, there's a big argument about where this is intelligent or residential. I bet it's a
So
mix
the
of
movie
both.
that Chris was looking
Yeah.
for earlier, it's
Concerning
Cadence.
Leavenworth.
It's the movie Cadence, and came out in 1990. It features the whole Sheen family, Martin, Charlie, and Emilio.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to name a few famous inmates, we got Machine Gun Kelly.
Oh.
Now, this is in Leavenworth, not in the movie.
Now,
no,
Machine
no,
Gun
no.
Kelly, this is not the guy who is engaged to Megan Fox,
No,
right?
not
Yeah,
the singer.
that one, yeah,
Okay.
We're talking about the OG.
Oh, the
Machine
OG.
Gun.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Got it.
OG Machine
Got it.
Gun Kelly,
Yep.
the gangster and bootlegger. Big Bill Haywood. Jack Johnson, the heavyweight boxing champion.
That goes back
Not the
before our
singer.
time. Yeah.
Yes,
No.
These are, we got Bugs Moran.
Bugsy Moran.
Not
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
Yep.
No. Yep.
We also,
Are we drunk?
some
No,
of us
but
are.
we ought to be. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The Birdman of Alcatraz was there for a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you went to Alcatraz. Yeah.
Let's see,
So, there was a notably...
James Earl Ray.
Yeah. He was there. There was a lot of notable, if you will,
Oh.
gangster personalities that were...
More modern one, Michael Vick.
Yeah.
Michael Vick.
He was there?
Now,
Really?
can you tell us a little
Dog.
bit about the history? I know this started out as a military-only prison, but in when? Do you remember?
Did we write that down?
No, I don't think we wrote it down. At some point, it changed out to be a federal prison because the reins of the prison was given over to the federal government so they could incarcerate civilians there. My wife...
Give me a
Gotcha.
couple seconds.
Yeah, my wife and me are desperately looking for this information. So anyway, at this point, it was turned over at that point, and then we started seeing the likes of, the Birdman of Alcatraz. We're starting about Machine Gun Kelly. Some of these people were taken there. Why? Because before Alcatraz, this was the rock you didn't escape from. I mean, this was a military prison. If you escaped out of the prison facilities, you escaped into a military base. Good luck with that. Funny story, when I was a Sea Cadet, we had some people that just couldn't take it. They wanted out. I was probably 14. We're staying in a barracks that has 80 people in it, and we had some guys that decided to go AWOL. They knew where the fence to the RTC, Retreat Training Command, was at, and they decided to go over the fence. Funny thing, all they were doing was going over the fence into the main base. So they weren't getting very far. They'd be picked up within a few minutes and brought back. And needless to say, they weren't able to finish out their basic training. The problem is a lot of people didn't realize this, and I think there's a lot of correlation here. You get out of the disciplinary barracks, you're just opening up into the regular pace.
Yeah.
At some point, MPs or Shore Patrol will pick you up. Military police or Shore Patrol is going to get you sooner or later. And I think that's a lot of what we had to deal with here. And even though we don't have the exact dates, the thing was, this was a very, and still is to this day, I think it's still open as a federal prison, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. So we're still seeing a lot of people. It's a medium security. It used to be a high security. Now it's a medium security. I mean, there's probably a lot better bases now. In comparison, we look at Alcatraz. Alcatraz started out as a federal prison for military. I mean, it was a military fort before that. And it became a federal prison before, or a military prison before it became a federal prison. So, a lot of that is there. So
is Levenworth still like a base?
Yes, it's a full functioning U.S. Army base.
Yeah.
Okay.
Around.
And a prison.
And the prison
Around the
still,
prison.
that's what my question was if it was still in.
So with the close of this, I want to cite sources. Go ahead. Got something?
The Levenworth was the largest maximum security federal prison from 1903 to 2005.
Oh, okay.
And then after that, it was redesignated to a medium security men's prison. It only houses men at this time.
Okay. But it's still open.
So.
Before we finish this, I want to cite our sources, most certainly, and then I want to give everybody a chance to say what they want. One of the sources was legendsofamerica.com. Great website. We got a lot of information off, of course, Wikipedia. Onlyinyourstate.com, Kansas. We did really well with that one. We got a lot of information. Hauntedhouses.com. Those are the sources we're citing, and those are where we got the information from this. Obviously, we're in the Hoosier state, so this is reaching out a bit, but I thought it was rather fitting for Veterans, Memorial Day, or Veterans Day, rather.
I have some sources, too.
Go ahead.
Military.com, that's where I got a lot of stuff. DODEA.edu. For those that don't know, which is probably you guys, the military used to, stateside, and still does overseas, operates their own education system.
Okay.
So that's what the DODEA is, DOD education.
Okay.
Now most bases just have their residents' kids go to this local school system. But overseas, they still operate their own schools.
Okay.
And also from jbsa.mil.
Outstanding. Okay.
Awesome.
For my end of it, I want to say to all fellow veterans out there and all the foes who have served, Godspeed. Heather?
Happy Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Yes, happy Veterans Day. Thank you to you guys for your service and for all friends and family.
Eric?
I just want to say thank you to anybody currently serving or has served. It's freedom. Our freedom depends on your service. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for everything you've done to our friends in the United States, and on behalf of Mia, to Canada as well.
From all of us at Spirit, God bless America, and thank you for your service. Good night. Before you say good night, this is time for the ghost story of the day. So I want to credit that tonight's episode was written by Heather Lawson. She did a great job. This is her first episode she'd ever written. And it's now time for Ghost Story of the Day, and we're going to let Heather do the Ghost Story of the Day. So here we go.
This is the Ghost Story of the Day, and it comes from, of all places, reddit.com. It's from r/ghost, courtesy of Hayden is Lurking, and it's just titled Fort Leavenworth. Fort Leavenworth is said to be one of the most haunted military installations in America. My father doesn't believe in ghosts at all, but he told me a story about his time there at Levenworth. We lived in the town of Leavenworth for about a year, and he would frequently go do his PT on post. He told me a story of his time during the winter months. He said, I was running PT one morning, and there was snow on the ground. It wasn't really snowing that morning, as most of the snow came down during the night before. I noticed a few guys who I didn't recognize running one morning up ahead of me under a streetlight. As I got closer, I saw no trace of footsteps. By the time I had got to where I had seen them, there were no footprints at all, and I didn't see the guys anywhere after. No sign of them. It was as if it was a dream. And I know the story isn't spooky or haunting or poltergeist, but my dad doesn't entertain ghost tales at all. Besides this, he has never come up with any other story of his time on there. I'm not sure how deep the snow was, but seeing as how it had never snowed and we didn't get a snow day and we were able to sled, I'd guess that the snow was at least 2 inches deep. So even if it had been lightly snowing, the time wouldn't have been sufficient to fill their tracks. There are said to be almost 36 haunted houses on Fort Leavenworth. For those who have not been there, it has an ominous feel. The abandoned and old prisons feel creepy, as well as there being houses that look like they haven't been occupied for years. Not sure who all would believe this, and you can have your doubts. If my dad would entertain any ghost stories and play along, I would call BS too. So there we go. Thank you. Hayden is lurking.
Thanks for listening to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd., all rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.